The emergency broadcast crackled through the void of space, carrying with it the desperate plea of a dying civilization. Admiral Zephys of the Galactic Harmony Council pressed her scaled fingers against the communication panel, her violet eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting of her flagship's bridge. "This is Admiral Zephys of the Harmony Fleet to any vessels within range." Her voice trembled despite her attempts to maintain military composure. "We are under attack by the Void Reapers near the Kepler 442 system. Our defensive lines have been broken. We have civilian evacuees aboard 17 transport vessels requesting immediate assistance, any assistance." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Around her, the bridge crew of various species worked frantically at their stations. The gentle Aquarians with their translucent skin moved like flowing water between consoles. The rock-like Terrians operated heavy machinery with their boulder-sized hands. The bird-like Aviarians soared between upper control stations, their feathers ruffled with stress. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Corax, a young Aquarian whose normally calm demeanor showed cracks of fear. "3 more transport ships have gone dark. The Reapers are systematically hunting down our evacuation fleet." Admiral Zephys closed her eyes. In her 40 years of service, she had never encountered anything like the Void Reapers. They had appeared from the dark space between galaxies 6 months ago, their black ships moving like living shadows. No demands, no communication, no mercy. They simply consumed everything in their path. The Harmony Council had believed their combined fleets could handle any threat. After all, they represented the peaceful cooperation of 12 different species across 4 galaxies. Their technology was advanced, their ships numerous, their crews well-trained, but the Reapers had torn through their defenses like they were made of paper. "Admiral," the communications officer, a Terrian named Boulder Who Speaks, rumbled in his deep voice. "We're receiving a response to our distress call." Hope flickered in Zephys's chest. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything any of them had heard before. It was rough, filled with strange accents and sounds that their translation systems struggled to process. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Terran Colonial Navy vessel Indomitable. We copy your distress call, Admiral. What's your situation?" The bridge fell silent. Zephys exchanged glances with her officers. The Terrans were a relatively new species to the galactic community, having only made contact 15 years ago. They came from a planet they called Earth, located in what most considered the Outer Rim wastelands. Their world was classified as a Class 12 Death World by the Galactic Survey Corps, a designation reserved for planets so hostile that life should not have been possible. Most council members viewed the humans with a mixture of pity and amazement. How had such a fragile-looking species survived on a world where the very air was toxic to most other life forms, where the gravity was crushing, where violent weather systems could destroy entire cities, and where the native life forms competed in a constant struggle for survival? The humans seemed nice enough, but their applications to join the Harmony Council had been politely declined. They were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too primitive. They still engaged in warfare among themselves, still ate other living creatures, still solved problems with violence. The Council had offered them observation status, hoping that in a few centuries they might evolve beyond their barbaric tendencies. But now, with her fleet dying around her, Admiral Zephys felt no prejudice. "Captain Martinez," she responded quickly, "we are facing an enemy unlike anything in our records. The Void Reapers have destroyed most of our defensive fleet. We have civilian transports carrying millions of refugees, and they're being hunted down one by one. We need help." There was a pause. When the human captain spoke again, her voice carried a different tone, harder, more focused. "Admiral, we've been monitoring the situation from long range. We know about the Reapers. How many ships do you have operational?" 7 warships and 12 functioning transport vessels, But, Captain, our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. I must warn you, these are not ordinary hostile forces. They are— Ma'am, the human voice interrupted, and Zephys could hear other voices in the background, speaking in rapid, clipped tones. With respect, we've seen the tactical data. We know what we're getting into. What's your current position? Admiral Zephys transmitted their coordinates, her hands shaking slightly. Through the view screen, she could see the dark shapes of Reaper vessels in the distance, slowly but methodically pursuing the fleeing transport ships. Each transport carried nearly 250,000 souls, beings from a dozen different worlds who had been forced to abandon everything they had ever known. Copy your position, Admiral. We're 12 hours out at maximum burn. Can you hold that long? 12 hours. Zephys looked at her tactical display. The Reapers were gaining ground steadily. Their energy weapons could slice through Harmony Council shields like they weren't there. Worse, they seemed to learn and adapt to every defensive strategy her commanders employed. I don't know, Captain. We'll try. You won't just try. Admiral, you're going to hold that line because millions of people are counting on you. My Admiral wants to speak with you. The voice that came through next was older, carrying the weight of authority and experience. Admiral Zephys, this is Admiral James Chen of the Terran Colonial Navy. I understand your situation is desperate. We're coming with everything we've got. But I need you to understand something about humans, about why we might be able to help when others can't. Admiral Zephys listened intently as the human admiral continued. You see, Admiral, every species in the Harmony Council evolved on worlds that, by galactic standards, are paradise planets. Stable climates, abundant resources, predictable ecosystems. Your people learned to build, to create, to cooperate, because your worlds allowed it. They nurtured those traits. The Admiral's voice grew harder. Earth is different. Earth tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blotted out the sun. Earthquakes that swallowed entire continents. Predators that hunted us. Diseases that decimated us. Storms that could level forests. In the background, Zephys could hear what sounded like dozens of human voices, all speaking rapidly in their strange language. We didn't just learn to survive, Admiral. We learned to fight. Not just other creatures, but our entire planet. We learned to adapt, to improvise, to overcome. When other species were developing art and philosophy, we were learning to kill things that wanted to kill us. When they were building cities, we were building weapons. Admiral Zephys felt a chill run down her spine. Around the bridge, her officers had stopped their work to listen. Admiral Chen, she said carefully, are you saying that humans are warriors? The laugh that came through the speakers was not entirely pleasant. Admiral, every human is a warrior. Every human child learns to fight before they learn to read. It's how we survived. The Council looks at us and sees primitives who haven't evolved beyond violence. They're right, in a way. We haven't evolved beyond violence because violence isn't something you evolve beyond when your entire existence depends on it. The transmission crackled with interference as another Reaper energy beam carved through space nearby, barely missing one of the transport ships. But here's the thing about the Void Reapers, Admiral. They're not facing a Council species that learned to solve problems through discussion and consensus. They're about to face a species that learned to solve problems by hitting them with the biggest stick we can find until they stop moving. Admiral Zephys found herself holding her breath. In the distance, she could see the Reaper ships beginning to close in on the transport convoy. Time was running out. Admiral Chen, what exactly are you bringing? The silence stretched for several seconds before the human admiral responded. Everything we have, Admiral. When the word came down that an entire civilization was being hunted to extinction, every human ship within 50 light years changed course. We're not just sending a fleet, Admiral. We're sending a crusade. The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Harmony flagship in stunned silence. Admiral Zephys stared at the tactical display, watching the slow but inexorable approach of the Reaper vessels. In 12 hours, either the human fleet would arrive and somehow turn the tide of this battle, or the last free citizens of 17 different worlds would join the countless billions who had already fallen to the Void Reapers. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Corax called out, his voice tight with stress. "The Reapers are accelerating. They'll be within firing range of the main convoy in 10 hours. Admiral Zephys straightened her shoulders and returned to her command chair. Whatever happened in the next 12 hours would determine the fate not just of the refugees under her protection, but possibly of the entire galactic civilization. And their only hope lay with a species that the rest of the galaxy considered too primitive and violent to join their enlightened society. She had never been more grateful to be wrong about anything in her life. "All ships," she announced across the fleet communication network. "This is Admiral Zephys. Hold your positions. Protect those transports. We have help coming, and by the 7 Sons of Harmony, we're going to buy them the time they need to get here." In the depths of space, the countdown began. The most savage species the galaxy had ever produced was on its way to face an enemy that had never known defeat. The Void Reapers had consumed entire star systems, eliminated whole civilizations, and struck terror into the hearts of beings across 4 galaxies. But they had never fought anyone who came from a death world. They had never fought humans. Admiral Zephys watched the countdown timer on her display reach 0. 11 hours and 47 minutes had passed since the human admiral's transmission. Her fleet had managed to hold the line, but barely. 3 more transport ships had been lost, their hulls cracked open like eggs by Reaper energy beams. The remaining refugee ships huddled behind the protective screen of Harmony warships, but even that protection was failing. The Void Reaper fleet had grown to 37 vessels, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. Their formation was precise, methodical, like a mechanical predator slowly closing its jaws. They fired their weapons with calculated efficiency, each shot designed to cripple rather than destroy, forcing the Harmony fleet to choose between saving ships and saving lives. "Admiral," Lieutenant Corax called out, his voice hoarse from hours of continuous duty. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace exits at the edge of the system." Admiral Zephys felt her heart skip a beat. "Show me." The main display flickered and changed to show the outer system. At first, there was nothing visible. Then, like stars being born, points of light began appearing in the darkness. Not the gentle, controlled emergence that marked Harmony Council ships dropping from hyperspace, but violent, angry tears in reality that seemed to burn the space around them. 1 ship appeared, then 5, then 20. The count kept climbing as more and more vessels translated from hyperspace into normal space, 50, 100, 200. The sensor operator, a nervous aviarian named Whistles in Wind, began reading numbers that made no sense. "Admiral, I'm counting over 400 individual vessels." "That can't be right," Admiral Zephys whispered. The entire Harmony Council fleet across all 4 galaxies numbered perhaps 600 ships total. "Ma'am, the configuration..." Whistles in Wind's feathers were standing completely upright in shock. "These aren't just warships. I'm detecting carriers, dreadnoughts, destroyer squadrons, assault ships, support vessels. Admiral, this is an entire battle fleet. No, multiple battle fleets." The communication system crackled to life. This time, the voice was different, younger, carrying the sharp edge of command authority. "Harmony Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Navy, commanding Combined Fleet Vengeance. Admiral Zephys, we have you on sensors. We're moving to engage." Admiral Zephys found her voice. "Admiral Chen, how many ships do you have?" 437 vessels, representing every human world and colony. We've also got some friends with us. Volunteers from species that know what it's like to fight for survival. Permission to assume tactical command? Before Admiral Zephys could respond, her tactical officer, a steady Terrian named Stone That Endures, spoke up with wonder in his rocky voice. Admiral, you need to see this. The human fleet. They're not moving like any military formation I've ever studied. Admiral Zephys looked at the tactical display and felt her world shift. The human fleet wasn't arranging itself in the neat, organized formations that were standard across the galaxy. Instead, they moved like a living thing, like a pack of predators. Ships grouped and regrouped in patterns that seemed random but felt purposeful. Smaller vessels darted between larger ones in complex weaving patterns. The entire fleet seemed to pulse with barely contained aggression. Admiral Chen, Admiral Zephys transmitted, I'm transferring tactical command to you, but I have to ask, how did you mobilize this many ships so quickly? The response came back immediately. Admiral, when humans hear that someone is hunting refugees, every single one of us takes it personally. We know what it's like to run for your lives. We know what it's like to watch our homes burn. The only difference is that we learned to burn back. On the display, the human fleet had formed into something that looked less like a military formation and more like a swarm of angry insects. But as Admiral Zephys watched more closely, she began to see the pattern. The larger ships, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Harmony fleet, formed the core. Around them, smaller vessels moved in coordinated groups, ready to strike from multiple angles. Harmony vessels, Admiral Chen's voice came across all channels. You've done great work holding the line. Now pull back and protect those transports. We're going to show these Reapers something they've never seen before. Admiral Zephys wanted to protest. The Void Reapers had destroyed every fleet sent against them. Their technology was superior, their tactics flawless, their ships nearly indestructible. But as she watched the human fleet begin to move, something deep in her evolutionary memory stirred. The recognition of apex predators preparing to hunt. The Void Reapers noticed the new arrivals and began to shift their formation. For 6 months, they had faced enemies who fought with precision and calculation, following established military doctrine. They adapted their tactics accordingly, becoming more efficient at countering organized resistance. They had never faced an enemy that fought like a natural disaster. The human attack began without warning or formal challenge. One moment space was quiet except for the hum of engines and the crackle of damaged systems. The next moment, it erupted into violence on a scale that shocked both sides. The human ships didn't advance in waves or maintain formation integrity. Instead, they attacked like a school of piranha, each vessel independently targeting whatever Reaper ship was closest. But there was a method to the apparent madness. As Admiral Zephys watched in amazement, she realized that the humans were fighting the way pack hunters fought, coordinated but flexible, each individual acting for the good of the whole while maintaining the freedom to adapt and react. The first human weapons to impact Reaper shields came as a surprise. Instead of the clean energy beams favored by most species, the humans used a mixture of technologies that seemed almost primitive. Kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Nuclear warheads guided by artificial intelligence systems that learned and adapted in real time. Beam weapons that seemed designed not for precision, but for raw, destructive power. But it was the human tactics that truly stunned Admiral Zephys. When a Reaper ship focused its defenses on repelling attackers from one direction, 3 human ships would suddenly appear from another angle, firing everything they had before disappearing behind larger vessels. When the Reapers tried to concentrate firepower on a single target, that ship would suddenly be surrounded by a cloud of smaller vessels laying down defensive fire while the original target escaped. How are they coordinating this? Stone That Endures asked in amazement. Their communication traffic is a fraction of what it should be for this level of tactical complexity. Admiral Zephys was beginning to understand. They're not coordinating it. At least not the way we understand coordination. Look at the patterns. She highlighted sections of the battle on the tactical display. Each group of ships is acting independently, but they're all following the same basic principle: hunt together, protect the pack, never let the prey escape. They don't need constant communication because they all think the same way. A Reaper dreadnought, one of the largest ships Admiral Zephys had ever seen, found itself under attack from 16 different directions simultaneously. Its adaptive shields, which had proven invulnerable to Harmony weapons, began to flicker and fail under the constant barrage of mixed weapon types. The humans weren't trying to break through the shields with superior technology. They were overwhelming them with sheer relentless violence. When the Reaper ship's shields finally collapsed, the human response was immediate and devastating. Every weapon within range focused on the exposed vessel and fired at once. The ancient Reaper dreadnought, which had survived the destruction of entire star systems, disintegrated in seconds. But what happened next made Admiral Zephys understand why the rest of the galaxy feared humans. Instead of celebrating their victory or pausing to regroup, the human ships immediately swarmed toward the next target. The destruction of one enemy seemed to make them more aggressive, not less. They fought with the focused intensity of predators who had tasted blood. "Admiral!" Whistles and Wind called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "The Void Reapers they're retreating." Admiral Zephys stared at the display. For the first time in 6 months, the seemingly unstoppable Reaper fleet was pulling back. But the humans weren't letting them go. Human destroyer squadrons, smaller and faster than the main battle fleet, pursued the retreating Reapers like wolves chasing wounded prey. Admiral Chen's voice came across the communication system, and this time Admiral Zephys could hear the battle rage in it. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Do not let them regroup. Do not let them escape. These things have been hunting refugees across the galaxy for months. Today we end it." What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. The humans pursued the Void Reapers through the system, engaging them wherever they tried to make a stand. But this wasn't a running battle in any traditional sense. The humans fought like they were personally angry at each individual Reaper ship. When a group of Reaper vessels tried to circle back to attack the refugee transports, they found their path blocked by a wall of human heavy cruisers that opened fire without hesitation or mercy. When other Reapers attempted to use hit-and-run tactics, human fighter squadrons met them head-on in close combat that would have been suicide for any other species. Admiral Zephys realized that she was watching something that the galaxy had never seen before. Humans fighting not as civilized beings conducting warfare according to established rules, but as the apex predators of a death world protecting their territory and their pack. The battle raged for 7 hours. At the end, 37 Void Reaper vessels had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Not a single Reaper ship had escaped the system. The human fleet had lost 43 vessels and taken damage to dozens more, but they had achieved something that 6 months of Harmony Council military action had failed to accomplish. They had completely destroyed a Void Reaper battle fleet. As the weapons fire died away and rescue operations began, Admiral Zephys found herself staring at the tactical display in stunned silence. Around her bridge, officers from a dozen different species sat in similar shock. "Admiral Zephys," Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system, calmer now but still carrying that edge of controlled violence. "Your refugee ships are secure. We've established a protective perimeter and we're ready to escort them wherever they need to go." Admiral Zephys activated her communication system with shaking hands. "Admiral Chen, what you've done here today. The Void Reapers were considered unstoppable. How did you—" The human admiral's response was simple and terrifying in its implications. "Admiral, the Reapers made one mistake. They thought they were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. They were wrong. They never met anything from a death world before. They never met humans. As Admiral Zephys watched the human ships form protective formations around the refugee transports, she realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The Harmony Council had spent centuries building a civilization based on cooperation and peaceful coexistence. But sometimes, peace could only be preserved by those willing to fight for it. The humans had answered their call for help. But more than that, they had reminded the galaxy that sometimes the only thing that could stop a monster was a bigger, more determined monster. And humans, Admiral Zephys was beginning to understand, were very determined monsters indeed. 3 months after the battle at Kepler 442, Admiral Zephys stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Harmony Council, facing representatives from over 40 different species. The vast chamber, built to accommodate beings of radically different physiologies, buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. But today, every voice carried the same undertone of unease and wonder. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed tactical recordings from the battle. For the 5th time in as many days, the assembled representatives watched human ships tear through Void Reaper formations with a combination of savage efficiency and tactical brilliance that defied everything they thought they knew about civilized warfare. "The motion before the council is clear," announced Speaker Valdris, an ancient crystalline whose body reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns. "The human species has formally applied for full membership in the Galactic Harmony Council. Given recent events, this application requires immediate consideration." Admiral Zephys had been asked to provide testimony as the ranking military officer who had witnessed human combat doctrine firsthand. She had spent weeks preparing her report, trying to find words to describe what she had seen. Now, facing the assembled representatives, she realized that no amount of preparation could have been adequate. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. 3 months ago, my fleet was facing total annihilation at the hands of an enemy we could not defeat. The Void Reapers had systematically destroyed every military force sent against them. Our most advanced weapons, our finest tactical minds, our greatest ships. Nothing could stop them. She gestured to the holographic display. Then the humans arrived. The chamber fell silent as the recording played once again. Even after multiple viewings, the violence of the human attack was shocking. Ships designed for peace and exploration watched vessels built for war and conquest move like living weapons through space. "What you're seeing," Admiral Zephys continued, "is not just a military engagement. It's a fundamental challenge to everything we believe about how intelligent beings should conduct themselves. The humans didn't fight the Void Reapers according to established military doctrine. They fought them the way their planet taught them to fight, as if their very survival depended on it." A Terrian delegate, his rocky form shifting as he stood to speak, raised his massive hand. "Admiral Zephys, are you suggesting that humans are inherently violent, that they cannot be trusted to maintain the peace we have built?" Before Admiral Zephys could answer, another voice filled the chamber. Human technology, it seemed, had somehow managed to bypass the Council's communication protocols. "Representative Stone, who considers deeply," came the voice of Admiral James Chen, transmitted from the human delegation ship waiting outside the Council's space station. "May I respond to that question directly?" Speaker Valdris gestured acceptance. Though his crystalline features showed confusion at the humans' ability to penetrate their secure systems. "We are indeed violent," Admiral Chen said simply. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Violence is woven into our DNA, our culture, our way of thinking. We cannot change this, and we would not change it if we could." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Admiral Zephys watched as representatives whispered to each other in languages she didn't recognize, their body language universal in its expression of alarm. "But," Admiral Chen continued, his voice cutting through the noise. Violence is a tool, like any other. It can be used to destroy, or it can be used to protect. 3 months ago, we chose to use it to protect 17 million refugees who were being hunted to extinction. An Aquarian representative, her translucent form rippling with emotion, stood gracefully. Admiral Chen, how can we trust a species that solves problems with violence to maintain the peace we have spent centuries building? The response came not from Admiral Chen, but from another human voice entirely. Honored Representative Flow Like River, said Captain Sarah Martinez. May I tell you about a human concept called sheepdogs? Admiral Zephys leaned forward, interested. Human metaphors often revealed more about their thinking than their formal explanations. On our world, Captain Martinez continued, humans domesticated animals called sheep. Sheep are peaceful creatures that eat grass and harm no one. But they are vulnerable to predators. Wolves, bears, big cats that hunt in the darkness. So humans developed another type of animal to protect them, sheepdogs. The holographic display changed, showing images that the human ship was somehow transmitting directly into the Council's systems. Images of earth creatures, gentle wool-covered animals grazing peacefully, and larger, fierce-looking creatures with sharp teeth and alert eyes standing guard over them. Sheepdogs look like wolves. They have the same teeth, the same strength, the same capacity for violence. But they use these traits not to hunt sheep, but to protect them. They stand between the flock and the darkness, ready to fight anything that threatens those under their care. Captain Martinez paused, letting the implications settle in the chamber. The Galactic Harmony Council is full of sheep species. You are peaceful, cooperative, advanced beings who have created something beautiful among the stars. But when the wolves came, when the Void Reapers began hunting you, your sheep could not protect themselves. Admiral Zephys felt a chill run down her spine as she understood what the human was saying. You need sheepdogs, honored representatives. You need someone willing to stand in the darkness and bare their teeth at the monsters. You need someone who understands violence intimately enough to use it effectively when peace fails. The chamber was utterly silent now. Even the translation systems seemed to pause as the weight of the human's words settled over the assembly. Speaker Valdris's crystalline form shifted colors as he processed this revelation. Are you saying that humans wish to serve as guardians for the council species? This time it was a different human voice that answered, younger, female, carrying the confidence of someone who had seen war and survived it. Speaker Valdris, this is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran Marine Corps. 3 months ago, my unit was part of the boarding action that captured the Void Reaper command ship. We found their data archives. The holographic display changed again, showing alien symbols and star charts. Admiral Zephys recognized some of the systems marked on the charts. Peaceful worlds throughout Harmony Council space. The Void Reapers weren't just randomly attacking. They had identified every major population center in Council space. They were systematically exterminating the most peaceful species first, working their way up to those with any defensive capability. Their goal was the complete genocide of all weak, intelligent life. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Representatives from dozens of species spoke at once, their voices blending into a cacophony of fear and outrage. Commander Vasquez continued speaking through the noise. They had detailed psychological profiles of Council species. They knew you wouldn't fight effectively. They knew you would try to negotiate, to find peaceful solutions, to evacuate rather than engage. They counted on your civilized nature. And they were right, Admiral Zephys said quietly, though her words somehow carried through the chamber. We tried everything except the one thing that actually worked. She turned to address the assembly directly. Honored representatives, I have spent my entire career believing that intelligence and civilization meant moving beyond violence. I believed that advanced beings could solve any problem through reason and cooperation. The Admiral gestured to the tactical display, still showing the aftermath of the human assault on the Reaper fleet. I was wrong. Sometimes the only language that evil understands is violence delivered with absolute conviction. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to be more dangerous than those who would harm them. Speaker Valdris raised a crystalline appendage for attention. The question before us remains: can we trust humans to use their violent nature responsibly within the framework of the Council? The answer came from an unexpected source. Through the chamber's main entrance, a procession of figures entered, not through holographic transmission, but physically present. Admiral Zephys recognized some of them, refugees from the transport ships that had been saved 3 months ago. Leading them was an elderly aviarian, her once bright feathers now gray with age and stress. Admiral Zephys recognized her as Wind That Remembers, a respected philosopher and leader from one of the destroyed worlds. "Honored representatives," Wind That Remembers said, her voice carrying the weight of her years. "I speak for 17 million souls who owe their lives to human intervention. We have seen what humans are capable of when they choose violence." She gestured to the other refugees behind her. "But we have also seen what they are capable of when they choose compassion." After the battle, human medical teams worked for days to treat our wounded. Human engineers repaired our damaged ships. Human psychologists helped our children cope with the trauma of losing their worlds. Wind That Remembers spread her wings wide, a gesture of emphasis among her people. "We have lived among humans for 3 months. Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are dangerous. But that violence and danger are precisely what we needed when peaceful beings wanted to kill us for existing." She turned to address the human delegation ship directly. "Humans understand something that the rest of us forgot in our journey to civilization. Sometimes the only way to preserve life is to be willing to take it. Sometimes the only way to maintain peace is to be prepared for war." Admiral Zephys stepped forward. "Honored representatives, I recommend that we not only accept humanity into the Council, but that we formally establish a new position, Guardians of the Peace. Let the humans do what they do best, so that the rest of us can do what we do best." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives raised concerns about human aggression, about the precedent of accepting a violent species, about the philosophical implications of relying on warriors to maintain peace. But gradually, the voices of opposition grew quieter. Finally, Speaker Valdris called for a formal vote. The question before the Council: shall humanity be admitted to full membership with the additional responsibility of serving as guardians of the peace? All in favor? Admiral Zephys watched as representatives from species across 4 galaxies raised appendages, tentacles, wings, and various other anatomical features in approval. The vote was overwhelming, not unanimous, but close enough. As the session concluded and representatives began to file out, Admiral Zephys found herself standing before the tactical display, still showing the debris field where the Void Reaper fleet had died. She was joined by Wind That Remembers, whose aged eyes reflected the same thoughtful expression. "They scare you, don't they?" the old aviarian asked quietly. Admiral Zephys considered the question carefully. "Yes," she admitted, "they do. But what scares me more is the thought of what would have happened if they hadn't answered our call." Wind That Remembers nodded. "My people have a saying. The shepherd must love both the sheep and the wolf, for only by understanding both can they protect one from the other." The humans understand wolves, Admiral. They understand them because they are wolves. "But they chose to be our wolves," Admiral Zephys replied. "They could have ignored our call. They could have let us face the Reapers alone. Instead, They brought everything they had to save beings they barely knew. The old aviarian smiled, an expression made poignant by her beak-like features. Perhaps that is what makes them suitable guardians, Admiral. They are wolves who choose to protect sheep not because they must, but because they believe it is right. As Admiral Zephys left the assembly hall, she received a final transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Zephys, this is Admiral Chen. Thank you for your support in the Council. We want you to know that we don't take this responsibility lightly. We understand what you're trusting us with. Admiral Zephys activated her communicator one last time. Admiral Chen, I have one question. After everything that's happened, after proving that you're the most effective military force the galaxy has ever seen, why do you still want to be part of the Council? Why not just take whatever you want? The answer came back immediately, and Admiral Zephys could hear multiple human voices in the background, all apparently listening in. Admiral, we spent millions of years fighting for survival on our world. We know what it's like to be afraid, to be hunted, to lose everything we care about. We never want anyone else to feel that way if we can prevent it. The strong should protect the weak, not because they have to, but because that's what makes them truly strong. A pause. Then Admiral Chen's voice softened slightly. Besides, Admiral, the galaxy is a big place. There might be worse things out there than Void Reapers. When they show up, we want to make sure there are plenty of sheep species left to be worth protecting. As Admiral Zephys made her way back to her ship, she reflected on how much the galaxy had changed in just 3 months. The Harmony Council now had teeth. Sharp, dangerous teeth that belonged to beings who had learned violence in the hardest school possible. But more importantly, those teeth belonged to beings who understood that true strength meant using that violence only when necessary to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The Deathworlders had answered the SOS call, and the battlefield would indeed never be the same. But neither would the galaxy. And Admiral Zephys found herself looking forward to a future where peace was maintained not through the absence of war, but through the presence of those willing to fight for it. The age of the sheepdog had begun.